Hello, everybody.
Welcome back to the Canadian Virtual Lawyers Conference. My name is Mark Belache. I'm really pleased to introduce Ianiv Lowy, who's CTO, Set Communications Inc., Lowy, and Danny Doumish, CIO, Set Communications Inc. as well. Great presentation coming up, Cybersecurity and Top Threats. So over to you guys, Ianiv and Danny, and thanks very much for being on here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. So we're Set Secure Enterprise Technologies, and today we're going to talk about cybersecurity and the top threats.
So we're going to start with the ransomware, and then we're going to continue on to ways to stay protected. And from there, we're going to move on to spamming and phishing and how to spot it. So we'll give you some tips there.
And then we're going to talk about customer service in IT, cyber awareness and education, and how to get set. So let's jump right into it. So ransomware. There was a study that was done recently by Sophos, a big worldwide company. They took 5,000 companies globally, and out of that, there was 200 Canadian companies that volunteered in the survey. 39% were attacked by ransomware. This was from 2020. 52% did have insurance that covers ransomware, but that leaves about 50% that did not, which ransomware attacks had increased by almost 500% in 2020. And the average cost to Canadian company to rectify, that's everything from the time lost, the cost to get everything back up and running, is $404,000. So it's quite a cost if you do get attacked by a ransomware.
So how ransomware got into the organizations, 29% of them occurred through a file downloaded or through email with a malicious link attached to the email. Through a remote attack on a file server, 21% of the ransomware occurrences happened through that method. And then 16% occurred through email with malicious attachments. So the first one is with links, it says like click here to open this, whereas 16% is with an attachment to the email. And often it's something as common as, Word document or Excel document. And then the 34% remaining occurrences happen through things like misconfigured public cloud, through remote desktop protocol, which is a way to remote into computers.
Which is now outdated. Which is now outdated at this point in time. We don't recommend, and most people don't recommend to use that form of remote access.
Yeah, it's not secure. There are way more secure methods to remote into a computer, especially these days when you're working from home. And then also one thing that people aren't aware of is that last point that through USB removable media. Often you may have something on there that maybe you backed up from a long time ago, or you just don't think that data on USB is ever going to be unsafe, but you have to make sure that all files are safe. And the first step is having something like an antivirus to make sure of that.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into some case studies now on ransomware. So the first one was GM of company A. So he had ransomware dormant on his computer for over a year, and one day he called us up and was asking why he can't open some files. So we logged in remotely and saw that there was a weird file extension on all the files, and looked it up and quickly found out that it's a ransomware attack that started locking up every single file on his computer. So we quickly told him immediately, shut everything down, unplug your computer even to that extent, so just nothing else can get locked up. By the time we showed up, it was only about half an hour later. The guy was still working away on his computer. We found some pretty disturbing things there, but turned out that the ransomware was from a while back, so we were able to decrypt it, which took about 6 or 7 days of the computer just running through that old school kind of black screen with the code looking on it, which essentially was just unlocking each file one by one. And we got all of his files back, so we were able to save that guy and the company's files.
Another example that happened, an owner of a small firm, they actually came to us seeking help in a pretty, they were in a pretty panicky mode because it happened after a ransomware attack. They didn't have any cloud or any local backups. Even though there was an IT person, we were kind of puzzled as to what, I guess he was just kind of sitting there waiting for tech support cases, but never considered that their data needs to be backed up. The ransomware payout, well, the request was $10,000, and it was a two-person firm. So, for them, that's a lot of money. That's a small business. They didn't pay it. They basically had to cut their losses. We were able to recover some of their data, but needless to say, they're not with that IT person anymore. But yeah, it's crucial to have backups.
And then firm B, this was another prospective client that came to us that was seeking some support. They had a subpar mail server that they were using, and they were pretty much a victim of being the next. They were the next ransomware victim. The way they were going with their setup, with all the junk mail they were getting, and spam that wasn't getting filtered through the proper spam filters that would be if they had the right setup. So they came to us. They had about 120 employees with emails that were not working for about a week. And in about a day, we're able to switch them over and avoid any ransomware attack or any other sort of attack, and as well as get them working with their emails.
Ultimately, everyone is a target. Small businesses are becoming bigger targets than their larger counterparts of the conglomerates and the monopolies and whatnot. Small businesses are actually the ones being targeted, and they account for nearly 60% of all the attacks. So it's absolutely crucial that you take proactive steps to protect your data.
So we're going to talk about how to protect yourself and 3 basic steps. The first thing is getting the right protection, making sure it's as simple as having an antivirus. And it's not only for Windows. You want to make sure that Macs as well as all your devices are protected. We recommend BitDefender. That's the company we work with to resell, as well as Cyber 2.0, which is exclusive to us in Canada. It's a new software that works. The way that regular antiviruses work, just for a comparison, is very much like how we need to create a vaccine for a virus. So the regular antivirus needs to be determine the virus before it can create that vaccine. The way Cyber 2.0 works is in reverse, where it will isolate the virus before it's even known, which is a whole bunch of mathematical, technological things that is what Cyber 2.0 is, but it's able to work mathematically to determine a threat before it's a known threat, and able to isolate it, and we can actually eliminate a threat before it spreads throughout the whole network. So that's something we can explain more. If you're interested, you can come and talk to us about that after.
Yeah, just to add to what Danny said, imagine, an analogy with COVID, imagine we had the ability to detect and prevent the virus and preventing it from spreading before it even hit our systems. So that's kind of what Cyber 2.0 is. It's pretty revolutionary in the way it is able to protect before the attack occurs. And with that being said, I guess we're moving on to backing up all your data, which we spoke about in the previous slide. You have to have multiple layers these days. It's essential. What does that mean? It's local backups. So have the backups on your computer. If it's in an office, you should be backing up to an on-premise server, like a local server. And then you should also have cloud backups. So that Google Drive is one form of it, but you also have to have encrypted cloud backups. Essentially, 3 to 4 layers is an effective backup policy these days.
Yeah, as even cloud backups these days are getting targeted for ransomware attacks, meaning that they start locking up all your files, and it doesn't matter whether it's on the cloud or locally, the files could start getting locked up. If you have an extra backup, instead of having to go back to no data, you can at least go back a week or whenever your other backup is set to. And the last layer of protection that we recommend in terms of getting yourself set is just being proactive. You can go one step further, and cloud backups that, as Ianiv mentioned, are encrypted already. You can actually encrypt your data yourself, so that way all your local backups are encrypted, and it'll add another layer of encryption onto the cloud. Another huge thing that everybody should be using right now is multi-factor authentication or two-step verification on every login that you have for every app, for every single login essentially. Some offer an authenticator app option, which is even a higher level security, where it'll send a code into this app where you can even protect that app with your biometrics, which goes into the next thing. Use biometrics, because passwords it's hard to make a very strong password these days and actually remember it from most people. So it's very recommended to use biometrics. A lot of corporations have been for the past year recommending and pushing all their employees to be using biometrics wherever possible, because it's a lot harder to crack that. And about passwords, definitely do not use your name, birthday, address, kids' names, anything related to you. Just make it a random phrase. The guy that actually said to use random characters from the FBI a bunch of years back took that back and said that it's actually longer passwords that are more secure. So if you make it like a random phrase, like address, password, inside, out, and a few numbers behind it, that's just a completely random phrase that something might be easier to remember, and it'll be stronger. Essentially, layered protection is the way to go. And we're going to show you a little video on what a cyber attack would look like in real life. So that was essentially going from spamming to more spamming to a ransomware attack, what it looks like in real life. And that's what happens pretty much on a daily basis in the virtual world. And here's some examples of spam attempts through text messages. So the first one, here's the second one, third. So all three, out of four, there's only one that has a regular looking number. But in fact, the first one is okay when you don't, if you're expecting, as I was expecting here, a password reset, and there's no link in it, that's a key thing. If there's no link, that's always a good sign. The second one is also a good one, but there are occasions where people have received a text message for a package that they're expecting, what looks like for the package that they're expecting, but in fact it's just spam. We got a call actually about that this morning. That colleague's wife actually fell for one of those things yesterday, and we're helping find out where her data went off to. Another one here, this one is definitely spam. When you see a random IP address, random numbers with a link, that's never going to be legitimate. And the last one as well, your account will be removed. They always try to scare you as well, often telling you your account's being deleted, your funds are frozen, your package is being held, things like that, with a link to try to get you to react and click quickly. And the problems start happening once you click. So just never click, always go to the source if you're worried.
So this is essentially just a quick quote from BitDefender, who are one of the leading antivirus, anti-ransomware companies out there right now. Essentially, what they're saying here is cyber criminals are getting more and more lethal, and they will not stop at anything. And they'll actually, things like the global pandemic, they'll use it towards their advantage. So you have to always be vigilant.
And I just actually saw the note here from Ianiv that the audio did not come out in that video, so I'll send out the link to everybody if they want to check out that video afterwards. But essentially, there was a store that popped up on the other side of the street that copied that looked identical to the original store, just like a fake website will show up with a similar name to your company, and it'll make it look exactly like the actual company, but it's not. Just like this email, for example, looks like it's from the administrator of the host for this company, saying that please update your service because you're going to stop receiving emails within 24 hours if you don't. And it sounds and looks very friendly and doesn't look threatening at all. But the key thing is, what you want to do here is look at who the sender is and where are they directing you. So you can right click and check the info of the email. Although sometimes, just like a spoof caller ID, there's people that use spoof ID essentially for emails now as well. So that's not always easy to determine. But you can always call us and we can help. The second thing you want to do is check the other link where they're directing you, which you can always right click on that kind of button or the link. And even if it looks like it's bringing you to rbc.com, if you right click it and do copy link address and then paste that in a notepad file, it might be bringing you to something completely different. And if it looks like a whole bunch of scrambled numbers and letters, then it's most likely spam. And this one's another example where they just used first name MSN, last name service, and they try to make it look like they're MSN, trying to tell you that your account's going to be locked out. Once again, if you click verify now, then it's going to bring you to another page where most likely it's going to look like MSN's page. You're going to sign in, and it's not going to really sign you in. You're going to just give your login details to the attacker.
So we have a few case studies. The first one, I'll call them Firm X. Email came in to somebody who just started volunteering at the firm, which at this particular firm it happens often. In the email, it basically said it seemed as if the owner was emailing the volunteer to purchase $10,000 worth of gift cards, which again is common in this particular firm. The spammer, as you see here, they even mentioned details regarding an upcoming event. So it was tricky because it all sounded accurate.
And in the end, they had sent out the money, and and there was no way to get it back. Firm Y had the accountant received actually a request from her superior to release some funds, which would seem like a legitimate invoice. However, she did notice that something was a little bit off with the timing, and had contacted the superior, as is always the best, as we recommend, always just validate anything that might seem off, or anything with big dollar amounts is always safe to double check with the person. So she checked with him, she checked with us to make sure that it's that she's still safe and secure. The request was for over $100,000, which again is not uncommon for this firm. But if they did send it out, if it was a really busy day or just by chance she didn't happen to notice it, that money would have been gone, and most likely gone forever.
Firm Z. So in this case, the owner received an email from exactly what Daniel was showing earlier. It looked like RBC, saying that some updates were required and they needed to sign into the account. It was basically, and again, if it's a very busy day, you might click and you're like, oh, what does RBC want? Okay, let me log in and check. So we always recommend, going directly to the website. Go to rbc.com. Don't click the link inside the email. If you think there's an issue, just go directly to the account. Use the app on your phone, or if you're on your computer, go into the browser, go to rbc.com. But it's always a safer way than clicking on an unknown link within an email.
And essentially, everyone is a target to these spam attempts. We've been noticing it's at least once a day occurrence that we're hearing from somewhere, or receiving a text ourselves, or one of those phone calls. So even when expecting an actual shipment, just watch out for any texts that are related to it. As there was one, like I mentioned earlier, somebody called just about an hour ago saying that his wife ordered something online, and there was pretty much spam that she had registered for without even realizing it. So we're figuring out that situation now. Any texts or emails with a link, always go, like Ianiv just said, go to the app itself. And any emails or text requesting any specific details, whether it's login information or especially money related, no bank or anything ever sends you a text or email with that kind of information. And there are a couple other threats out there. So lurking.
So one of them is Trojans and viruses. That's pretty much the traditional way, traditional threat that's really gained popularity in the 90s.
And then there's advanced persistent threats, which those ones often go unnoticed for months, and that's a lot to get into. We can go into more with people with one-to-ones on that. And the "it won't happen to me" statement is false, as it's already happening to you, and it's already happening to everyone that you and I and we work with. So that's why you want to stay protected, and that's essentially what you can do about it. Multiple layers. And we're going to get into a little bit on the cost of the breach. So essentially, time and being out of service is the way that we calculate it. The dollar amount is kind of hard to say. As we showed before, that the average Canadian estimate for a ransomware attack, the cost of recovery is about $400,000, which is quite high. I'm sure for smaller businesses it might be a little bit lower, but it's still in the thousands. And if you do have a pro level IT support with managed backups and security in place, and all your monitoring systems with insurance for cyber security, and all the proper protocols in place, you could be down for less than a week or two, and that'll be pretty much a best case scenario if there is a successful ransomware attack. If you do it yourself and you have some backups and some security in place, insurance as well, you want to make sure that the ransomware is included in cyber insurance. We have a couple of people that we can recommend for cyber insurance as well, and possible protocols that you have in place that could still be putting you out of business with a successful ransomware attack could put you out for 2 to 4 weeks, which is quite a bit of time. It would be debilitating if you do everything yourself with no backups and you just leave the most basic security that comes with your computer, and you have maybe some minimal protocols. So you could be out for a month to 2, and at the worst case scenario, a ransomware attack could end the company. If you have no backups and you depend on your data greatly and you have no insurance and no security, it could damage your reputation beyond repair, essentially. So it's quite a scary thing, but that's unfortunately the world we live in today. And essentially, the question you want to ask yourself is, how much does a business day cost? And can you afford to be in disaster control for days or weeks or even months? The essential thing is to get layered, get set, and get yourself backed up and secured.
So yeah, any network device can be a target these days. So any smart device, your fridge, your smart TV, anything that has, because a smart device means it's connected to the internet, so it has an IP address. So ovens, speakers, tablets, smart TV. So you essentially need to protect your network from the core. So that's so that way any device is protected.
And that's where Cyber 2.0 really comes into play, because the way that it works, which I'd be happy to set up for anybody. Essentially, these are all the things that are connected for your business. It's the internet, the phones, your emails, your website, cybersecurity itself, and your entire database.
Yeah, so the importance of customer service, when choosing, if you have an IT company, if you don't, or even if you're hiring IT personnel, customer service is key, because essentially you get what you pay for. So you need to make sure you have, you need to be running your business, and you need the IT guys to be taking care of your data. So you need to make sure they're readily available.
Yeah, essentially just like what happened the other day with Rogers, it was obviously a huge deal, and as we all know, their customer services, we already have low expectations for them, but they were giving updates every couple hours for a Canada-wide outage, which is quite unacceptable for the kind of service they provide. So you want to always make sure that you're looking into doing research to the services that you're using and making sure that it's reputable and that it's got good quality for what you're going to get. And the last thing you want to make sure is the cyber awareness and the education itself. So from the employer side, do you have an implemented data hierarchy, which we'll show a graphic of in just a moment? And are there backups in place? Are you aware of what kind of backups you have? Or is every device secured? As we mentioned before, the passwords are using strong passwords, and is multi-factor authentication set up for each account? Do you have an overview of your IT setup in general?
And for the employee side, again, cyber awareness. Is their home network secure, especially these days, everyone's working from home? Are you using strong passwords and multi-factor authentication? Don't share information that's not required to be shared, especially not intentionally. Is there a cyber policy in place for your business? And that kind of goes hand in hand with customer service as well, because education is always ongoing, and so is customer service.
And essentially, this is the data hierarchy. You want to know who has access to which data, and our employees' networks, home networks, secure now that people are working remotely, and is everyone aware of the common threats? So essentially, the company owner would have access to all the data, and the accountant would have, for example, access only to the accounting data, and the lawyers would have, let's say, only their end user data for their own devices, and some specific client data that are assigned to them. The clerks may have their end user data as well, of course, and maybe more limited specific client data that are assigned to them. And the clients, if you have a system that provides clients their login for their own portal, then they would have access only to their own data. So you want to make sure that you know who has access to what. And that essentially brings us to the end of our presentation. And
here's, so some of the partners we work with: Microsoft, Google, as we mentioned, Cyber 2.0, BitDefender as well. And that does conclude our presentation, and you can contact us by email or by phone.
Well, thanks very much, Danny and Ianiv. Great presentation, very informative. We do have a question from Faye. What is an example of APT?
so that would be, like, for a big example, we can send out an article. It was an attack on, was it like the Facebook breach that happened recently, unless I'm mixing it up with a ransomware attack. But one of the big corporations essentially had an attack that's ongoing for a long time. Oh, I think it was the Microsoft Exchange attack. They had essentially some software that was vulnerability in the software that was sitting there for a long time and was being like it was, they said that the Chinese government was stealing the information. So there was a lot of data being leaked over a long period of time that was no one was aware of, essentially, until they finally figured it out and somebody noticed it. So that's kind of a good example of a large scale ongoing attack. So that's kind of an advanced attack. That's just, they're pretty much stealing, they plugged in their, how people used to steal back in the day, like electricity from the neighbor, and just plug in from there. So that's pretty much what they were doing with the data.
Okay, and Faye just clarified for smaller law firms?
So essentially the same kind of thing could happen. I think it's more rare for that to happen for smaller law firms. I guess that's why we didn't get into too much detail on those, but that would be the same idea if somebody were to be stealing information from your company on an ongoing basis, and you just have a vulnerability that's not
there.
secured.
Like one example, it's like as Danny said, it usually happens to larger firms. Like, that's usually where there's like state sponsor attacks. Like people saying China did the attack or Russia did the attack. That's kind of what an APT is. But an example with Blackbot, there's CRM, but because they actually spread onto smaller clients, even some as database of only 100 or 200 users on them, it actually started from the smaller clients, from the smaller businesses onto the main servers of Blackbot, and by the end of it, everybody was down. The whole thing was offline.
Interesting. Okay, and just wrapping up here, Anita also noted, don't forget that many of these cyber attacks involve privacy breaches, which are subject to privacy regulatory requirements. So good point, Anita. Okay, well, thanks again to the two of you. Great information. If you want to reach out to Danny or Ianiv, feel free. Their contact information is there, 647-849-4410 or info@setcom.ca. Thanks to the two of you. And just wanted to remind everybody that you can take our poll. It's a one-click poll. All you have to do is just go into the event tab and click on the polls section, and click on the one-click poll. In the meantime, we have a couple of great sessions that have actually started. Karen McDonald, how to minimize pain changing practice management software. And then Emily is right on stage right now, the 4 dimensions of yourself, crucial for career confidence. So you don't want to miss that. And I'll be back here on the main stage in less than half an hour at 3:30 Eastern time, which is in about 25 minutes, talking about or moderating the panel, which we should have some great information and great conversation there as well. So thanks very much to the two of you. Feel free to reach out to both of you. Thanks very much for being on here. And for the rest of you, make sure to check out the sessions. They're on right now. And thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.